and I'd like to tell you a little bit about it. This is a good place to start. See, most methodologies of testing, of development, of anything, they like to focus on tools and artifacts, and to some extent rules, procedures. And if you were teaching, say, carpentry, then these would be the tools you'd be looking at. Various kinds of chisels and saws and gouges, and maybe the idea would be, teach how to use these things, and then there you go, you're a woodworker. I take a different approach. My focus is on the person, the practitioner. I think this is the way that we get very good at testing, not by talking about test techniques, but by focusing on problem solving as a tester and getting the tester to feel agency as a tester. Now, how I do that has a lot to do with what's called a wildlife garden. Came across this concept a few years ago. A wildlife garden is a special kind of garden that you design specifically for the purpose of attracting wildlife. You don't try to control everything in a wildlife garden. You're trying to create a habitat that brings living creatures in, and they live and work together and I suppose eat each other. That really is how I try to teach. The approach that we take, well, both in teaching RST and in practicing RST, is a cultivation approach rather than a domination approach. I know that when I was younger, much younger, and I would take classes, I never responded to any expert, no matter who he was, telling me to shut up and just accept whatever it was that he said. I don't learn that way. My son doesn't learn that way. I don't think any of my friends learn that way. The way we learn is by entering a topic and taking a certain ownership of that topic, whether it's mathematics or programming or needlework or anything. I learned to fly an airplane, and the whole focus of learning to fly an airplane is you get the student pilot to take responsibility for flying that airplane from the very first lesson. And I was much influenced by the process of learning how to fly, because on lesson number 1, I'm in the pilot's seat and the qualified pilot is in the passenger seat. And the qualified pilot is telling me, you are going to fly the airplane today, from the very first lesson. And the whole idea is to get you to feel that responsibility to fly, and yet to allow you to fly safely. So I try to teach testing, and I try to perform testing in a similar, responsible manner. Within rapid software testing methodology, there are 3 roles. The role we focus on in most of our classes is the responsible tester role. That's a special title, responsible tester. That title exists within rapid software testing, not really outside of it. I don't know of anyone else who calls people responsible testers as a title, but we like to use that title. What does responsible tester mean? It means a tester who is personally responsible for the quality of his own work. No one else is responsible, just that tester. That's the point at which you are a responsible tester. The responsible tester responds to clients and context. The responsible tester makes effective use of heuristics and tools. Now, there's another kind of tester called a supporting tester. Supporting testers are not responsible for the quality of their own work. They're only responsible for helping out with the testing, for helping the responsible tester get the job done. Now, a supporting tester can be a very senior person. In fact, I, on a regular basis, behave as a supporting tester for another tester. The character of supporting tester has nothing to do with how much you know about testing. What it has to do is your relationship to the work. If your relationship to the work is that you are helping someone do what they think is right, and you are not second guessing that strategy, you're following that strategy, then you're a supporting tester. If you are entirely responsible for that strategy, then you are a responsible tester. That is to say, if the testing goes wrong, you can't say, well, I just followed instructions, it's not my fault. But if you're a supporting tester, you can say that. You can say, look, I followed instructions. That's what I said I was going to do. That's what I did do. The third role is test leads and managers. So we have some training for test leads and managers as well as for responsible testers. But most of our work is focused on training responsible testers. To be a responsible tester, you must have freedom, wisdom, as well as responsibility. And I like to use a slightly provocative definition of freedom. My definition of freedom is the ability to hurt someone or yourself. That's what freedom means to me. When you're driving a car, you're free. You're free to drive that car right through a brick wall if you want. You can hurt someone, but they don't let you drive a car unless they think you know how to drive it safely. And that's what wisdom is. And they don't let you drive the car unless they think you're going to drive it safely, which is what responsibility is. Responsibility is trying not to hurt people or yourself. Wisdom is knowing how not to hurt people or yourself. But freedom is always, if it means anything, it means the freedom to do things that might go wrong. To build responsible testers, you have to give them enough freedom so that they can gain the wisdom so that they can be responsible. That means as I'm training testers, I need to let them screw up to some degree. In rapid software testing methodology, we make a sharp distinction between explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is knowledge and skill that is unspoken, it's unwritten, it's unpictured, it's embedded in your body, or it's collectively embedded in the social world around you. Software testing absolutely relies on tacit knowledge. Now, explicit knowledge is also important. I can teach explicit knowledge by putting it into words. I can tell you things. But I can't talk you into knowing how to design a test. What I have to do to build that tacit knowledge in you is to get you to practice solving problems. When you practice solving problems, eventually it clicks and you have that knowledge in your body. It's called somatic tacit knowledge, knowledge in your body. To summarize what rapid software testing is on a really high level, we could say it's a mindset and a skill set. It's not a set of procedures. It's not a set of templates. It's a mindset, meaning it's a way of thinking. It's a skill set, meaning it's a set of things you know how to do. We introduce you to the mindset by showing you and by talking about that mindset. We introduce you to the skill set by giving you certain problems, and you try to solve the problems, and then we talk to you as you try to solve them and after you try to solve them. And then we try to get you to practice. It's focused on how to do testing quickly, inexpensively, but with excellent results. That's the idea. Now, we have a little different meaning of testing, and I want to get to that. Little history, the rapid software testing was created by me, James Bach, in the 90s. Throughout the 90s, I was creating it. I didn't name it until January of 2001, which is the first time I taught RST as a class. So that's 20 years ago. Last month was the first time I taught an RST class called RST. Before that, I taught exploratory testing classes. I talked about it in other ways. My colleague Michael Bolton in 2006 became a principal author of RST, and now I call him the co-creator of RST. He and I are mind melded when it comes to RST. If you talk to him, anything he says about RST, I completely endorse, and I hope he feels the same way about me. This is a general testing methodology. We've applied this to video games. We've applied it to medical devices. We've applied it to embedded systems. The methodology doesn't care what your technology is. It also doesn't care whether you're on an agile project or not. It doesn't matter because the methodology is focused on the kind of problem solving and design that you go through in order to test. But what do we mean by testing? What we mean by testing is a little different than what some other methodologies mean by testing. Our definition is evaluating a product by learning about it through the processes of experiencing, exploring, and experimenting. There's a lot that we're saying in those few words. Testing is always an evaluation process. It is always a learning process for a human. It is a fundamentally human process, although you can use tools in support of it. Questioning, modeling, observation, inference are all parts of testing. But there's another big part of testing too, which is called checking. In rapid software testing, we distinguish between testing and checking. Checking can be automated. It often isn't automated, but it can be automated. Checking is an algorithmic process of operating the product, gathering data about the behavior of that product and its output, and then comparing that output to something. A lot of people call that testing. I don't call that testing. I call that checking. It is part of testing. Output checking is important. It's a very important part of testing. I don't think I could do testing without checking. But testing, unlike checking, is a social process. I need social competence when I am actually testing because I am making judgments about what is important and what's not important, what people care about, what they won't care about. And I'm constantly adjusting those things. If you take someone who has no ability to make social judgments, they will not be able to do that very important aspect of testing, which is to be sensitive for problems that matter as opposed to problems that don't matter. So that's a social process. Checking is a mere mechanical process, which is why checking can be automated, but testing cannot be automated. So I'll never use the term automated testing again. I stopped using that term about 10 years ago. Instead, I say automation. I'll say automated checking. I'll say test tooling. Tools are very important, and I use them all the time. I'm actually working on a test tool for Tricentis right now that I'm excited about. So I'm into tools. I do a lot of programming. Especially now I'm doing a lot of programming. But I don't believe that any of the programming that I'm doing is automating the test process. That's all I'm saying. It's automating support for the test process. So how do we teach this differently? Well, we don't talk about test cases very much. This is one thing that's quite a bit different than other kinds of testing classes that you might have seen or you might go to. We see testing as an event. A test is an event. It's an event in space and time. When I perform a test, I am doing something at a particular time and a particular place. If I write down what I did, what I wrote down, that's not a test. That's notes about a test. I can, of course, write down procedures. You can have test procedures. I can write down test cases, but those aren't tests until they're actually performed. So in RST, we can talk about test documentation, and when we do, but we like to focus on the event of the test itself and on testing as a human activity. Here's what we try to do in the class. We try to unpack the dynamics and trade-offs of testing to show its complexities. We teach you about the epistemology of testing, which is a fancy way of saying, how do you think like a tester? We use a Socratic approach because we think that helps you take control and take ownership of the material. We offer lots of heuristics that help you test better. And in the class, we explain what a heuristic is. That's a whole talk in and of itself. We encourage you to change our heuristics. And we offer practical exercises to help you build your skill. Every instructor who teaches RST, and there are several, every one of these instructors, we all teach it differently. Michael teaches the class a little differently than I do. Michael even has different materials than I have. They're not very different, but they're somewhat different. We all agree on the underlying philosophy, and we are all the people who teach RST talk together and challenge each other and develop the basic ideas as a group. But it's mostly Michael and I who are pushing forward the state of our methodology. Here are our ultimate goals. Why are we having RST methodology? Now, right before this presentation, Michael saw this slide because I like to show everything to Michael before I do it so that I don't have to get yelled at later. And he said that I missed something on this slide. He said that I didn't say anything about one of the goals of RST methodology is to get people to focus on testing. Testing as finding important problems before it's too late. And I said, well, I don't need to have that on this slide because it's right in the word testing. And he said he thought that wasn't enough. So I'm telling you that one of the ultimate goals of RST methodology, in case it's not obvious, is to get people to focus on finding problems before it's too late. But also these things, to help people take full responsibility for testing. Because I think people don't take full responsibility for testing right now. I think very few testers take full responsibility for their testing. If you challenge them on their testing, I find they very rarely can answer the challenge. Now, there are some people like, well, for instance, Teapot is an example of someone who seems to me, he takes a lot of responsibility for how he thinks about testing, for his testing practices, the conversations I've had with him, that's been very clear, but he's an unusual guy. I want to get more testers taking full responsibility. I want to help people design and explain their test strategies. Lots of people write test cases and can't say anything about their test strategy. I want people to report on testing, but without using fluff and deception. Stop counting test cases. It's not telling anybody anything interesting. It's fluff. I want to help people grow testing skill on the job, and I want to help you achieve self-respect so that you feel a strong, happy sense of confidence in yourself as a tester. That's how I feel. I want to share that with you. And I want our craft to be worthy of respect by smart people who are not already testers. And right now, I look around and I don't see that testing is a respected craft. I think that's our fault. I think we have not taken testing seriously enough to learn it and study it and talk about it in sophisticated ways. Now, my methodology has roots, and the roots lie mainly in these people. If I had to put on one page the people who've influenced the RST the most, it would be these people: Kem Kainer, Gerald Weinberg, David Hume, Richard Feynman. You probably aren't familiar with most of these people because most of these people aren't testers. Only one is. Kem Kainer. Gerald Weinberg is sort of a software expert, and the rest are people outside our field entirely: philosophers, physicists, an economist, a nuclear engineer, a sociologist. These people have all contributed something that have created the groundwork that I built on for RST. Some of them are Nobel Prize laureates like Herbert Simon, Daniel Kahneman, Richard Feynman. The three of them won Nobel Prizes. Maria Montessori is a famous educator from 100 years ago. And her Montessori method deeply influenced my son's life. My son went to a Montessori school the entire time he was in school. He only went to Montessori schools, and I learned a lot about their teaching methods, and I try to emulate those teaching methods when I'm doing RST. Montessori believed in hands-on play as a powerful way to learn, and that's what we also try to encourage. Now, there are two people whose conversations over a 15-year period were profoundly important for me in developing this methodology: Kem Kainer and Jerry Weinberg. Jerry Weinberg died a few years ago. Kem Kainer is retired. But I think if it wasn't for specifically Kem, I met Kem in 1995, and I was already getting to be known as a prominent voice in the testing field. And Kem had written a book on testing. And Kem's older than me. He'd written his book. He'd left the field to become a lawyer. He came back into the testing field, and we started working together. And the amazing thing is, for a guy with 2 PhDs, which he had, he never talked down to me. I used to say that between Kem Kainer and I, we average 1 PhD apiece, because he had 2 and I had none. So we had a very productive collaboration. And over the years, Kem turned me on to methods of scholarship that I needed to learn about, and to certain aspects of the philosophy of science that I didn't know about, and especially the importance of applying psychology, especially cognitive psychology, to software testing. So a lot of my snobbishness about testing, which many people seem not to like among my rivals, really comes from learning from Kem Kainer about taking what it means to take a craft seriously and really understand the science behind it and try to drive it forward from a really good foundation, a rigorous foundation. And I feel that most people are ignoring that. Kem Kainer said, testing is a social science. And he had the education and the authority to know exactly what that meant. And I have been carrying that flag forward ever since he first made that argument to me in 1997. So this is my last slide. This is the only kind of promotional type slide that I have for you. This is in case you want to find out more. There's something like 52 different documents you can download from my website. There's a zillion things on Michael Bolton's website. We've got classes that we teach. I wrote a couple of books. I forgot to put them on the slide here. So with that, Teapot, if you want me to take some questions, I'm happy to do it. Oh, I see questions in the chat. I didn't realize I had a little chat here.
There are 2 questions in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, James. That was really helpful. I feel a lot of people would have wanted to go on, but it's an introduction anyway. So I've got a question here from Josley.
Yes.
Is it okay to be a supporting tester, test lead, or test manager, or one should always work to be responsible testers first and later evolve?
It's totally okay to be a supporting tester. In fact, if you are only a part-time tester, as many people who do testing are on agile projects. I mean, they're developers, they're product owners. Lots of people do testing where testing is not their first love. It's not what they're trained to do. They are supporting testers, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, I think that one of the things we try to do is give some people some training in how to make the best use of supporting testers. For instance, I don't want supporting testers to do paperwork. I want them to find bugs fast in the most fun way possible so that they will help me over and over again, because they'll enjoy the testing process instead of seeing it as boring bunch of paperwork. I think it's perfectly okay to be a supporting tester. And I myself am in a supporting role whenever another tester is asking me for help, but they don't want me to take over their testing process. They just want me to help them do something that they've identified as important. And if I'm in the supporting role, I'm not going to argue with them about, oh, you're doing it all wrong. Unless I see it's really, really wrong and they're going to get really hurt. And then in that case, I may speak up.
I think I haven't done the managerial course. I think what I take from that, James, is about responsibility. To be honest, I think the support testers is actually what a lot of people are, like you said, but it's the level of responsibility that everyone is willing to take on. It's not like an hierarchy where this is senior to that. No, it's just the level of responsibility.
Well, it's just about responsibility. And one of the dangers is where you have someone who is responsible for the testing, but who is not around, and they aren't supervising the supporting tester. And so the supporting tester, who is not responsible, is following some scripts they don't understand. That's a dangerous situation. That's like a qualified driver of a car being blindfolded and put in the back seat while a child is driving. That's not going to be a safe situation, even if the qualified driver is dictating exactly what to do to the child. So yeah, we think that the key idea is responsibility. And are you really taking responsibility? And so many times when I challenge testers on why are you doing this, they go, stop yelling at me. I'm just doing what I was told. Well, that's a child's response. That's never a response that as a self-respecting human adult I could ever give to anybody about anything I cared about. I was just doing what I was told. I mean, unless I'm an amateur and everybody knows I'm an amateur, so if my wife wants me to help her cook something and I do something wrong, it's like, I'm just doing what I thought you wanted me to do. I don't know what the right thing is to do, so you better supervise me. When my son wanted to have an aquarium, I told him that I would do things for the aquarium that he didn't want to do, like change the dirty water, as long as he stood next to me and he told me exactly what to do and he supervised me while doing it. As long as he did that, I was willing to do these messy things where he didn't want to get his hands dirty. And I figured I'd be training him to be a responsible leader, even if he wasn't doing the dirty work himself. And it turned out to be a wonderful system. And I did that for 7 years with increasingly large aquariums. And he started doing some of the dirty stuff himself anyway. He just got over his problems with it. But every couple of weeks, he'd tell me it's time to go do the aquarium, Dad. And I'd say, what do you want me to do? You need to go pick up that bucket and then do this with that bucket and then put that tube here. And I'd go, okay. Yes, sir. And I'm trying to give him an experience as a responsible leader. We need more of that, I think, in our industry.
Yeah, I agree with you, James. I'll take one more question, and there's this question here that kind of get my interest. I'll take the second part of the question because the first part really is kind of a misnomer in terms of what we're talking about. But this one says, can full responsibility be lowered in favor of scope, time box, or risk analysis? What do you think, James?
No. I think with what I mean by responsibility, it has nothing to do with scope, time box, or risk analysis. What I mean by responsibility is, can you answer for your work? If you do work and it's not done well, is your response to that, so what? Or is your response to that, I will learn and grow and get better? The second response is a responsible response.
Yeah.
The first is not. So I don't think it really has anything to do with scope, time. It's with it, given whatever scope, whatever time box, whatever kind of risk analysis, you can take full responsibility for that. There's another question here that I'd really like to deal with, though, Teapot, which is, that was a question, why rapid?
Yeah,
and
I was going to come to that.
I should have anticipated that one, and I have a slide in my regular class notes that I want to show you because here we go. This is why rapid. We mean rapid in the sense of working with a sense of urgency, and we mean rapid in the sense of eliminating processes that aren't necessary. That actually was the original thing I was thinking of. I was trying to think, I could call this the James Bach test methodology, but I wanted something descriptive. And I thought, what is the hallmark of this method? And what I realized is that we don't follow best practices. We follow the practices that make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, we don't do it. We throw away things that are just a waste of time. So in that way, we can be as rapid as we can reasonably be. However, sometimes rapid testing is slower than other forms of testing because other forms of testing are irresponsible and are doing bad work. And of course, you can have really, really rapid testing if you say it's allowed to be very bad testing. So sometimes, even though we're rapid testers, we say, hey, you can't safely go any faster than I am going right now. We need to take the appropriate time to do the work. Now, I have to admit something, which is I love deep testing. Deep, complicated, sophisticated testing. I love it. But that's not rapid testing, because if I do deep testing when deep testing isn't needed, if it isn't called for by the business risks, then I'm wasting the time of my employer. So it's actually a danger for me. I have trouble practicing rapid testing sometimes because I want to do deep testing. So what I try to do is just keep reminding myself that that shallow testing is often a good kind of testing that we should be doing, and not the deep testing that I want to do. So I try to find usefully deep testing to do where it actually is called for by the risks of the situation. So sometimes we can do testing in a very quick way because we get more shallow, because we don't try to test very much of the data space. But that's okay if the risks allow it. If indeed you have good reason to believe that there aren't any terrible bugs that could be hidden in that code, and if you have good reason to think that, then it could be reasonable not to do very thorough testing on that part of the product. And of course, you could be wrong. Sometimes we guess that we don't need to do deep testing, and then we get burned by a bug. But the essence of rapid testing, you see, is we take responsibility for that. We say, okay, I missed that bug. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to get better. That's what I always say to my clients. I always say, I cannot guarantee I'm going to find every bug. I can guarantee that I will care very much about every bug I miss. I will take it personally if I miss any bug. And I will learn from that, and I will grow from that. And nobody can make a better guarantee than that. No one else can guarantee that you can find every bug, but we can guarantee that we can learn.
Yeah. Thank
All
you
right,
so much,
so,
James.
so there seems to be lots of other interesting questions here, and I'm happy to answer them all. But I mean, it's up to you what we want to do.
Do you want to take a few more? I've got one for you that if you are still able to take one or
I
two.
would like to. I have to say, I would like to.
All right, so let's go with this one. Do we need to reinvent the wheel always? As you've said, try it out yourself. Don't listen to what people are saying us. So what do you think about that? Like, why do anyone
I
learn
think
this?
that unless you reinvent the wheel, you do not understand wheels. You want to understand a wheel, then you have to invent it. And this is true when this is why people who are car mechanics, they have to take apart cars and put cars together again and make them work. And they need to figure these things out for themselves. They need to know why. Here, let me give you an example of reinventing the wheel that is a positive, good example. I'll tell you something right now for free that is absolutely true. Avoid automation through the graphical user interface of a product for regression testing purposes. Avoid that. It is a trail of tears. It is the pathway to madness. Try not to do it. If you're going to use automation, try to go underneath the GUI level, which is much more stable and much more suitable for automation. That's what I try to do. Now, let's hypothetically say that you believe me. That you believe me because I'm a great testing expert. Thank you, by the way. Let's say you believe me, and so then you decide I am not going to do that GUI level automation because James Bach, testing expert, said don't do it. What is going to happen to you in 10 years? Here's what's going to happen. You're going to be teaching a testing class because now you are the expert. And I'm gone. because there's because of software bug happened on a Boeing jet and crashed, and my life was tragically lost. Okay, but you still are here teaching testing classes, and you say to your students, never automate through a GUI for regression testing purposes. And one of your students says, why not? And you say, because James Bach said so. Really? That's it? James Bach said so? You mean you didn't try it yourself? Well, no, because that would have been reinventing the wheel. Reinventing the wheel has bad connotations, but it also has good connotations. Reinventing the wheel can mean investigating for yourself why things are true instead of taking somebody's word for it. So how do we deal with that paradox? I will tell you how we do it. Here's how we do it. If I want to teach you about automation and the dangers of GUI automation, I don't tell you not to do it. What I want you to do is I want you to be aware of the trouble and why it's trouble. Then I want you to try it. I want you to spend a couple of months trying it. Here's the thing, though. I spent 5 years trying to make GUI level test automation work. 5 years. And I constantly was blaming myself and my team. Oh, we must be doing something wrong. Eventually, I realized we're not doing anything wrong. It's just a bad idea. And I know why it's a bad idea. And I can explain why it's a bad idea. Now, I'm hoping and I believe that any of you do not need to spend 5 years learning this. That with the help of people with experience who can give you guidance, you can learn this in a couple of months just as well as I know it today. But in that couple of months, you need to reinvent it. You need to try it for yourself. And here's the thing. You might discover a way to do it better than I did it. And you might teach that method to me. So I always have it in the back of my mind that one of the things that might happen when I'm getting people to reinvent testing for themselves under my guidance is that that's a pathway for me to learn something new about testing that a student will teach me. And that way I can stay fresh and my mind can stay young. So if you're talking about reinvention as try things for yourself, inquire for yourself, don't just accept what other people tell you, then that's the kind of reinvention I think is good. If by reinvention you mean absolutely ignore what anyone else has to say, that's not what I mean. I don't ignore what other people have to say when I'm creating my test methodology. I take into account the things that I hear from other people, but I never take anything as true just because some expert says it's true. That's my answer.
Thank you so much, James. I question everything, and in an
That's why
attempt
I
to
like you.
question, in an attempt to question everything, I find some things that I go back and tell the person, you know what you said earlier. In an attempt to question it and trying to figure it out and stuff like that, I learned ABCD, and that has helped me a lot. Um, Thank you so much. I think I would like to wrap it up here before the
Okay.
powers that be come to chase us out.
Okay.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you, everyone who joined. These classes would be, I don't know the programs for the classes. I have attended the class myself, and I don't want to tell you myself how beneficial it is for me. But I think everyone here today can learn, can see how beneficial this could be for our careers individually. Um, when the schedule of the classes are out, the test chat will promote them. We'll put them in the group on our social media platforms and everything. I advise everybody here to have a look at it. Give yourself the chance, the opportunity to learn differently in a different way. And thank you so much, James, for coming today. Thank you for everything you've done for us today
I
and
very
all the
much
stuff you've
appreciate
taught
the
us.
opportunity. I hope this has been helpful for people, and it didn't just sound like a sales pitch.
Now, it has been
Thank you.
helpful for me, and I've attended the course as well. So it has really been helpful. Thank
Okay.
you so much,
All
everybody.
right. Bye bye.
To the next time, we'll see you again sometime soon. Thank you so much. Bye.